I speak 7 languages, the 10-year-old girl said. The billionaire CEO laughed. Says the cleaner's daughter. The whole boardroom roared with derision, until she looked him dead in the eye and said one sentence in perfect Japanese that shattered his arrogance and changed everything. It all started on a Tuesday morning in a gleaming high-rise in downtown Chicago. A 10-year-old girl named Elena had to accompany her mother, Maria, to her job as a cleaner because she had nowhere else to go. Maria, her face etched with a quiet exhaustion that never seemed to leave, asked permission for her daughter to sit in the corner of the boardroom while she finished her shift. It's a strange kind of magic, the way people in uniforms become invisible. Their hopes, their worries, their children, they all seem to fade into the background of the important lives buzzing around them. But that day, Elena refused to be invisible. With her worn backpack still on, she sat quietly, observing the men in expensive suits as they discussed million-dollar deals. Suddenly, one of the executives, a high-ranking Japanese businessman named Mr. Tanaka, noticed her. A cruel smirk played on his lips. "And what are you doing here?" he asked, his tone dripping with mockery. The question drew a ripple of snickers from his colleagues. Elena, with the unnerving stillness of a child who sees the world more clearly than most adults, answered simply, "I'm practicing my languages. I speak 7. The room erupted in laughter. It was a loud, ugly sound, the kind of laughter that isn't about humor, but about power. Mr. Tanaka, reveling in the moment, pointed a dismissive finger at her. "Spoken like a true cleaner's daughter," he said, the words heavy with contempt. The insult landed like a physical blow. Maria flinched and lowered her gaze, a wave of shame and helplessness washing over her. The other executives laughed again, their amusement confirming a shared, unspoken belief. A girl from her background couldn't possibly have such aspirations. But Elena didn't shrink. Her brow furrowed. Her small hands clenched into fists. She felt a surge of protective anger as she watched them humiliate her mother. In a firm voice she repeated, "Yes, I speak 7 languages. You don't have to believe me." Another executive, a man named Mr. Davies, chimed in with a sneer. Maybe she counts the hand signals she uses to wipe down tables at home. The men roared again. Maria grabbed her daughter's hand, whispering for her to be quiet, to not make it worse. But Elena didn't move. She stood planted before that long, polished table, a small girl against a wall of arrogance, feeling as though she was defending not just herself, but her mother, and every person who had ever been made to feel small because of where they came from. The air in the room grew tense. Mr. Tanaka leaned forward, thoroughly enjoying the spectacle he had created. "All right then," he said with a smug smile. "Prove it. We all speak English here, some of us French, a little German. But you? 7 languages? Not even the best private schools produce prodigies like that at your age." Elena took a deep breath. Her lips trembled slightly, but her gaze never left his face. She felt each word as a direct challenge, an attack on her worth and her mother's dignity. One of the younger men even pulled out his phone, ready to record the inevitable failure for a funny story later. It's funny, isn't it? How some people are so convinced of their own superiority that they can be staring truth in the face and still call it a lie. "Come on," Mr. Tanaka prodded, his voice sharp. "Surprise us, cleaner's daughter. That is, if you're not afraid of being exposed." Maria squeezed her daughter's hand, a silent plea to let it go. But Elena had already made up her mind, and what she was about to do would change the atmosphere in that room forever. She gently pulled her hand free from her mother's and took a step forward. "Very well," she said, and began to speak in English. Her accent was perfect, her diction crisp. It silenced a few of them, but only for a moment. Mr. Davies scoffed. "Anyone can learn that from watching TV. Try another one." Without missing a beat, Elena switched to fluent French, then to German. Each sentence was short, but grammatically perfect. Mr. Tanaka feigned a yawn. "Parroting," he said dismissively. "That's not speaking." "Yes, little girl, what's next? Going to sing us a song in Italian?" Another man jeered, drawing another round of chuckles. She continued, moving through Portuguese, then to Arabic, the confidence in her pronunciation stunning a few of the men into a new kind of silence. But still, they refused to give her any credit. She probably just learned a few phrases online, one of them muttered, and the others nodded in agreement. Mr. Tanaka, his cynical smile now fixed in place, tapped the table. That's all very impressive, I'm sure, but none of us can verify it. You're not impressing anyone here. Either do something that truly surprises us, or admit this is all a little game. His words hung in the air like a final verdict. Elena dropped her gaze for a second, the weight of their disbelief pressing down on her. Just then, an elderly janitor who had been quietly cleaning the hallway outside the glass-walled boardroom paused. He was an immigrant, too, a man who understood the language of invisibility. His eyes met Elena's, and he gave her a slow, almost imperceptible nod. It was a silent message, but it coursed through her like electricity. You are not alone. I see you. She understood. This wasn't just for her anymore. Elena lifted her head, her gaze locking onto Mr. Tanaka's with an intensity that startled him. With a calm that seemed impossible for a child, she spoke one sentence, fluent and clear, in perfect Japanese with an unblemished accent. Kotoba wa hito o kizutsukaru koto emo dekamasuga. Hanto no jibu no mizeru koto emo dekamasu. Words can humiliate, but they can also reveal who you truly are. The silence that followed was absolute. Mr. Tanaka's jaw dropped. The smug, condescending smile vanished from his face, as if it had been wiped clean. For the first time, he looked truly, deeply shocked. The other executives glanced at each other, utterly bewildered. He tried to recover, but his voice was barely a whisper. Who taught you that? One sentence. That's all it took. One sentence of truth to unravel a whole room full of lies. Elena's voice was firm. You wouldn't understand. It's not about titles or money. It's about respect. That answer hit them harder than any of the languages she had spoken. Maria, tears streaming down her face, watched as the dynamic of the room completely transformed. Several executives lowered their gaze, suddenly ashamed. The smirks disappeared. A young executive, one who had remained silent until now, stood up. His voice was serious. This is unacceptable, he said, looking around the table. We just allowed a child and her mother to be humiliated in a way that does not represent the values of this company. His words broke the spell. The pack mentality shattered, replaced by individual discomfort and shame. Elena hadn't just proven her talent. She had held up a mirror to their own cruelty, and they didn't like what they saw. Mr. Tanaka, now cornered and exposed, tried to pass off his comments as a misunderstood joke, but no one was laughing anymore. His currency in the room, built on arrogance and power, had just been rendered worthless. Maria finally understood. This was the start of a change, not just for her and her daughter, but for all the invisible people who worked in these halls. The room had witnessed something unforgettable. It wasn't just a girl speaking 7 languages. It was dignity, in the voice of a child, demanding to be heard in a place where it seemed to have no value. With her head held high, Elena took her mother's hand, and together they walked out of the room. They left behind a scene of expensive suits, broken smiles, and the deafening echo of a single sentence in Japanese. No one in that room would ever underestimate someone based on where they came from again, and they would certainly never, ever again mock a cleaner or her daughter. If this story reminds you that dignity is more powerful than any title, please share it with someone who needs to see that. Subscribe for more real-life stories where the underdog finds their voice. And always remember, it doesn't matter what language you speak if the only thing you have to say is cruel. True strength is speaking the language of respect.